Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Money D&A podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Dale,
I am Andy.
and we want to make sure that the conversation is going as well as the money is flowing in your life. We want to make sure that you are talking about all things money, and we're here to help you get started. Doesn't matter if you're making $1 million a year or if you're making $10,000 a year. You could be facing challenges, hurdles.
Right.
You might have questions and things that are itching from inside of your heart, inside of your brain. And we're hoping to be able to help you out, get those conversations going, give you some insights, hopefully have some fun along the way, and make sure that you are on your path to the life that we know you are meant to live.
Right.
Today, we want to continue through with our breakdown of the birthday cake. And in this cake, this layer we're talking about
In this case.
is the emergency fund or emergencies, right? Um, just as a quick recap, Andy's quick to the pen there. We had your cash flow layer and your bills paid on the bottom. You want to make sure that you're starting off, if you were to take all these different things, these different parts of your financial life as successive layers of a birthday cake, then the first questions you want to be asking yourself, you want to make sure that you are cash flow positive. You're not constantly, well, I mean, you want to make sure that you have enough money to be able to be
Right.
making any of these decisions, right? Once you have
Right.
that set, then you want to build the walls of your cake on a solid set of protection, right? Almost like using bricks instead of straw, or what are the other one? Wood sticks, I think was the other little piggy. What are the three little piggies
Right. Before
use?
we got to bricks. Exactly right. Yep. Yep. I think that was
Right,
the progression.
right. So you want to make sure that there's nice, solid walls built on protection. You want to make sure that the debt management is taken care of. You don't want anything eroding away at all the other layers of the cake. And then the next level up after that will be your emergency funds, preparing for an emergency situation, preparing for those rainy days. And last but not least, just to top off the cake, is the investments. It's pretty much everything else that everybody else likes to focus on and talk about, and that often bleeds into all the other layers, but really you want to be thinking about those investments last. And we'll talk a little bit about why later. But
Right. So before we go
as
to the next one, though,
yeah,
I do want to make mention of this because I've had recent conversations both as a client and and with my clients of I guess I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this. Understand that this bottom layer, I mean, it's kind of like an undergirding, right? I mean, most financial advisors will start talking from here on up, and that's true. And that is, I guess, the assumption is that you are cash flow positive and your bills are being paid. That's great. Times are rough and money is tight at this point. So understand that this is fundamental to the rest of this stuff. You really can't talk about the other ones without this one, which makes sense in this whole scheme of things. But don't feel pressured or pushed into conversations where we're talking about these upper level things when you know that I need to pay my bills, right? I need to figure out ways to earn more income and different things like that. That this assumption cannot be made for you. You have to make sure that you are in the right space to say, like, yes, we have that taken care of. Now we can start moving on this moving forward. I just a couple of events has happened this last couple of weeks that I wanted to just bring that up.
yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, Andy. I think that is not as much as we say that's a foundational layer, and we don't often talk about it nearly enough. You're absolutely right. The income generating, right? And trying to get a very solid sense, a sober sense of
Mhm.
how much money we are bringing in and how much money we are spending, like tracking your expenses. We talked about it quite at length about maintaining a budget and watching over your budget
Right.
with a sober eye, right? With a sober head, I guess. Sober heart, head, eye.
Mhm.
What part of the body is sober when we're talking about?
We'll say heart. Usually, what we
Sure.
want is it's usually a want, not a need, right?
Yeah, level head, sober heart,
There you go.
whatever
I love it.
what have
Yeah.
you, right?
Hmm.
I mean, they're not small. They're deep
Mm-mm.
questions,
Right.
especially when it comes to income generation. You're asking yourself, how do I make money? And
Hmm.
that's, for our growing years in North America up until the time we finish high school, it's often leading up to that exact set of questions. What am I going to do later? How
Right.
am I going to make money as an adult?
Hmm.
That's the biggest part of us adulting and growing up
Right.
really is like,
Yeah.
what do I do and how much money
Right.
am I going to make and
Right.
how do I make more money? How could I make myself more valuable
Mhm.
to the market, to other people? Or if you're selling something, then how
Right.
can I make sure that I have something that is able to add value to other people, and they know that I have something to add value. You could be
Right.
the most valuable person, value adding potential person on the planet, but if you're not marketing yourself properly
Right.
and nobody knows about you, then I'm speaking to myself in some ways.
Yeah,
Then
no, you and me both. I think we're speaking to the choir at this point. Yes, there's
yeah,
definitely that
yeah.
aspect of things.
But I
Uh,
mean, all this is to say,
mhm.
it's not an insignificant conversation. It's a
No, it is
significant
not.
conversation. And
Right.
sometimes, if you only get to this part of the birthday cake layer, then
Mhm.
that's enough for a day, right?
Right. Right.
Um, and even if you are well into all layers of the
Hmm.
birthday cake conversations, you know, you might still be going back to that question of like, well, how much money do I make? How do I add more value
Hmm.
to other people? And how can I realize that value and draw in more income? Sometimes your investments will eventually turn into income earning
Right.
potential as well, especially if you're in your retirement years, all that planning that you've done for your retirement, then all of a sudden the investments are becoming that foundational layer for
Sure.
you. So it's not just like, you know, for the young uns, it's at every stage. This is a
Right.
good conversation to be having. It's something good
Right.
to keep in mind.
Right. I heard something the other day that I thought was very fitting in this aspect of things is don't compare your first chapter to someone else's 20th chapter. I think for and it seems kind of cliche, but let's put it in the context of this. I've got a son that is graduating high school. It is not fair nor does him any good to compare his starting out salary, what his cost of living is, or not cost of living, but his quality of life and ability to travel and do that kind of stuff. It's not fair for him to measure that towards or to my area of living that I've been in my career for 20 plus years. You know, I've got this foundation. We've built this up to the point where we have all these layers. So just understand that people are going to be in a different spot, and that's okay. Comparison is the thief of joy. Just know where you're at. Work through these things. That's again the whole purpose of us having this conversation with you is to give you this progression of how to think through things and just work towards the next step. That's all you can do. All right, we ready
Absolutely.
for our first question, sir?
You know, Andy, I'm going to add on one more. I am ready for it. I'm going to turbo through it, I promise. But one more thing is, the comparison can go in the opposite as well. Like you might
Okay.
be in a situation, you know, like mine, where my parents didn't have a
Mm,
windfall of a lot of money, and they were really struggling, or they I saw them through suffering through and working through years, and hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, right?
hmm.
Just because that is their situation, that just because that's somebody else's story in some ways doesn't necessarily
Mm,
mean that that's going to be
right.
your story. Even if
Correct.
you know you're an apple that's falling straight from that tree,
Right.
they may be doing really well for you. I mean, they might you might be passing they may be passing on those debts to you as well, but it's exactly as you say. Comparison is a thief of joy, and it's really hard to get a sober sense of yourself if you're constantly focusing on and mindful of other people's stories, other people's situations that may probably will not be anything like your very own. In
Right.
other words, stop scrolling on that darn YouTube channel or Facebook
Right.
channel or something. In fact,
Right.
after you finish watching this video, subscribe to it, but then just move on and go about your day. Get outside,
There you
get some
go.
fresh air.
I love it.
Yeah. All
All
right.
right, let's dive in here. So as a
Talk to
recap
me.
here, we are on our emergency layer. So we've talked about the other ones, which we recapped just a second ago. But what is exactly, Dale? What is the emergency layer? What are we talking about when we say the emergency layer?
Emergency layer is basically building up an emergency fund
Okay.
for those rainy day situations. Emergency layer is building up savings, making sure that it is not it's not it is liquid, right? Liquid
Mhm.
means that it's easily accessible. You could go and within at least maybe at most a couple of days, you can access that money. If not instantly, then with very little friction, right? You also want to make sure that there's no penalties involved in taking out that money. There are some accounts that, you know, will grow for you, or they'll do something for you, like a guaranteed we call them a GIC here or a GIA. I think you call them CDs there, but something where
Mhm.
they say, hey, you can keep your money in the account for 6 months, and after that, we'll guarantee that it'll grow for, 3% or 4% or 6% or what have you. I think some bonds as well.
Mhm.
They
Right.
might also be similarly structured. So those would not be great candidates for an emergency fund because they're not liquid enough. They cost some money in order to take some stuff out. It can grow. It's not like you're going to have to pay money to have money set aside there, but it is a separate envelope. It is separate earmarked money, even a
Mhm.
separate bank account, and we can
Right.
get into that.
Right.
That you're saving aside for rainy days. If you don't have one yet, then you should start one now. It doesn't have to be hundreds of thousands of dollars, but yeah, maybe that's a good question. How much should we have in our emergency fund, right?
Right.
How much should we
So
have, Andy? What do
I
you think
would
is a
say the idea is, and I don't know if we've used this reference here, but I'm sure you've heard it before, is, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? And I am often stuck in analysis paralysis, right? Where it's like, oh, well, this and this, and then you never get started, right? So whether you're starting with a penny or a dollar or $100, whatever it is, you have to start, right? You can't get to that $1,000, that 3 months, 6 months, which we'll talk about in a second here. You can't get to that if you don't start now. So start with something. I would say one other aspect of this that is good, and I'm prepping for a class that I'm doing tomorrow actually, is automate your I don't know, not deductions, but automate your deposits,
transfers?
right? If you can automate that deposit, so say you get, you know, $1,500 every couple weeks, right? Just for example here, if you can automate putting $100 of that and to Dale's point, into a separate account, right? That $1,500 comes into your checking. As soon as it hits your checking, $100 automatically moves over to that savings account. Right, wrong, or indifferent, we are kind of an out of sight, out of mind beings, right? If we don't see it in our checking account, then we don't feel like we need to spend it. We just kind of stock that away for that rainy day fund, and then it's just sitting there. And again, that will start building up. Think of that: $100 for 12 months is that's $1,200, right? I mean, that's over $1,000. You hit your $1,000, which is a good place to start. Um, within a year, just with putting that $100 aside out of the gate here. So that would be my couple thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. If you want a really clear, actionable step, I love that automating step, by the way. That's really cool. So open up a separate account,
Hmm.
whether it's your high yield savings account or just a savings account at your bank or something. Don't make it just like, on paper. I remember that if it's $300 in my checking account, then $100 in there is actually my savings. If you're
Right.
creating a lot of work for yourself to be able to memorize numbers and trying to figure that out, then you're not making it easy for yourself. Make it super easy for yourself and go get a cost free or as low of a cost as
Hmm.
possible. Open a separate account at whatever bank or financial institution you can find, and if you can automate it, fantastic. If you can't automate it, then put monthly text reminders on your
Hmm.
phone, or write it down in your calendar now. Move $50 from
Right.
this account to that account, and just make it easy for yourself, because you're doing this for your future self, right? You're doing this for your future self. Um,
Right.
I
I love
think
that. So and I yeah, to your point, like I'm 99% sure that every bank will have a way to do automatic transfers. So, but maybe you're, not super tech savvy and that freaks you out. So to Dale's point, just set yourself a monthly reminder. You get paid on the 15th, on the 16th. Hey, this is your reminder to move that $100 over to your high yield savings account. So I love that. So really no excuse to not do that, even if you're not super tech savvy. This is a good way to just start that process.
yeah. How much money should people be setting aside, do you think, Andy, at the end?
That's a great question. Experts will say 3 to 6 months, which again, elephant, pause, take a deep breath, understand everyone's like, there's no way that I'm going to get 3 to 6 months. I get that, right? Start with 1,000, and then work your way up, right? That would be the best thing. before we get on this, just before, because yes, there's the amount that we're kind of shooting for, but we've talked about this before, but let me just get back to this. So HYSA is high yield savings account. So
Yeah.
the idea is that rather than putting it in the savings account that's probably at your local bank, which is going to get you like 0.01 or 0.02%, if you can put it into something 3 to 4%, some of them are a little bit higher depending on the time that you're watching this, but it seems insignificant. But just as an example, I moved from a local savings account and put it into a high yield savings account. Again, it's not a crazy amount of money. I think there's about $5,000 in there, but I'm monthly getting 30, 20, 30, $40, depending on, how much is in there at that exact point. So while the 3 months, 6 months seems like a lot, it's going to go a lot faster if your money is growing with you rather than just kind of sitting there. And I mean, it's kind of we didn't go the super old school of like putting it under your mattress, which is basically the savings account. I mean, if we're being honest, it's maybe a little bit more secure because it's in a bank, but it's still not doing much for you other than just being there for a rainy day, which I realize that's what we're talking about as an emergency fund. But why not have your money work for you, right?
Absolutely. If you can have, $1,000 sitting in account A versus $1,000 growing in account B,
Right,
same amount of time, then you might as well have that amount growing for you. It makes absolute sense. Um, that's truly passive income, right? That's an easy way
right.
to do it. And just have to do the homework. The only work that's required is looking to see where can I park this money and opening up that
Hmm.
account and then actually putting the money there. So,
Right. So
um,
I mentioned three
yeah.
to 6 months. Is that a number that you've heard before as well, Dale?
Yeah, I would say that's a great rule of thumb. I wouldn't some people go as far as a year
Hmm.
of time. And when we say like 3 to 6 months, we're talking about if for whatever reason your that bottom layer, that cash flow layer, right? Your income all of a sudden just was erased for any reason, for whatever reason, then you want to have 3 to 6 months of your income.
Hmm.
Oops, there you have it. I thought we would finish, but no, I'm going to start the timer anyways. The 3 to 6 months runway, essentially. So you want to make sure that you're not pulling out from your investments, you're not borrowing money or putting it on your credit card in
Right,
order to keep your lifestyle, keep your bills paid for at least 3 months, 6 months. Some people will go all the way up to a year, right?
right.
It's that like rainy day emergency fund. Obviously, if you are unable to make money because of a critical illness or because of a disability or something like that, then that's where having that protection could come really handy.
Right,
Um, and the two layers overlap a little bit in this regard.
right.
But this is for something, these are emergencies like all of a sudden your teeth get knocked out and you've got to go and get emergency dental surgery. Your grill on your car, not on your face, is knocked out and you've got to do a $10,000 car repair that you weren't
Right.
expecting, or you've got to buy a new vehicle or something like that.
Mhm.
All of a sudden you find out that your parents are ill and they're in another town. You've got to take your time off of work
Right.
and go and help them move and relocate them or something like that,
Mm.
right? These
Right.
totally unexpected things that
Right.
you want to have some runway for, and you know that in case you don't have the ability to earn an income or it might affect your cash flow, then it's not bleeding into any of the other layers, it's not taking away any of the other layers to be able to pay for those
Yep.
emergency
Exactly right.
items.
So our second question kind of is a kickoff from this conversation. But one more thing on that is let's be realistic. And we had this conversation I think when we a couple episodes ago. It's not a question of if, but when. It's going
Yeah,
to happen. It's going to
for
happen.
sure.
Okay. I understand that it's not fun to talk about death. It's not fun to talk about having to get a new car, all of the stuff. I understand that. But again, that's the reason you start with protection is because it's going to happen, right? But protection layer is not going to be able to cover some of the things that Dale just mentioned, like having to go over and help out your parents and travel and whatever the case is. So it's going to happen. You need to be prepared for it. Otherwise, that's why we get into this whole debt spiral. Okay. So second question. I thought we switched this around. Is that right? How do we start? Oh, yeah, it is. Right. So how
Yeah,
do we
we,
start here?
we
We
did.
kind of already touched on that a little bit of the high yield savings account. What are some other things that we can do to get started on this?
Yeah, I think if you've got extra cash, if you've done your budget analysis and you realize that you have some extra money,
Right.
then instead of having it sitting in your regular checking account or stuffed under your mattress as Don Corleone might be doing it, create a separate account and move it to that account. And if you can automate it, so it's mindlessly just transferring money for you, then you can add to it that way. If not, you can start Dave Ramsey styles. Have if you have an extra $1,000 sitting around, then just move that $1,000 and that becomes it, and then you just keep growing that
Mhm.
particular account, right? But you park that money away.
Right.
If you don't trust yourself with, I mean, obviously having help is tremendous. If you have somebody helping you with these transactions, just sitting down, you're doing coffee together, and you're going through the mechanics of figuring out how much money can you be putting out aside,
Mm.
and then actually making sure that that money is being put aside.
Right.
Then that's going to be great. Reach out to a trusted financial professional to help you with this plan. Make sure that emergency funds are a part of the discussion. If you're a financial professional, God bless them, if all they're telling you to do is figure out how you can tweak your credit score and make like borrow the most money on your mortgage, if the
Mm.
only thing that they're trying to do is tell you how to get a particular type of insurance that's kind of costly, but you
Mhm.
only have to work a little bit more to pay for or something like that. God bless them, but think twice about
Mhm.
continuing those conversations. They need to be giving you, whoever this person is,
Right.
needs to be able to help you and have conversations on a holistic level about your income, about what are possibility ways to be able to make more money, about your debts, and asking you soberly, even though they're painful questions to ask sometimes. What is your debt situation? How can we get you out? You know, what is your emergency fund? What are you doing
Mhm.
in case of a rainy day?
Right.
Andy, we talked a little bit before this, but I think we should mention it. Eventually, you want to be able to come to a point where you're talking about money and you're not just talking about number figures,
Mm.
but what you're doing is you're realizing time,
Mm. Okay.
right?
Yep.
You are projecting timeline. So when we say this emergency fund, we're saying, okay, you're giving yourself 3 to 6 months of buffer or runway. And you what you're doing is you're saying during that time, I either do or don't want to see this particular thing happening at that particular time, right? So in the case of emergency fund, I don't want to see myself not being able to do these emergencies because I have no choice but to make money, right? To earn
Mhm.
an income. I don't want to see myself going into further debt just to pay for a medical bill. I
Right.
don't want to see somebody else having to worry about these particular things and paying for my funeral. So these are like I don't want to see happen at X amount of time, right?
Mhm.
The other
Right.
the other side of that is I do want to see something happening in a particular time. I want to see my mortgage paid off in 20 years and not 30 years. I want to see my kids being able to go to college and have some money so that they're not having to go into too much debt, or I'm not having to go into too much debt to put them into school. I'm speaking to myself right now. This is
Mhm.
and then how I don't want to see, or I do want to see that in a year's time I'm able to afford no sweat, no debt. I'm not owing anybody else for it, but I'm able to afford that vacation or that trip that we talked about going. I've got
Right.
a 10-year wedding anniversary or 20-year wedding anniversary coming down the horizon,
Mhm.
and you start thinking now, what can I do now so that in a year or 2 years time,
Mhm.
that my future self and my spouse were able to afford that trip comfortably, and we
Mhm.
figure that out. So what you're doing then is you're starting to realize that the number of figures are just specific little details that are pointing to time
Right.
and what you want to see happening, the actions that you want to see happening at those junctures of time and those moments of time. Right.
Right.
Anyway, that's a bit of a tirade, but I
No,
hope it's
I
useful
like it. I
to
like it.
somebody out there.
You and I vibe on Andy Grammer. He's got a couple songs that just talk about, what if we could, Yeah, what if we spent our time in love rather than money, and there's the new money. He's got a really good things about that. We need to see if we can get him to sponsor our podcast so we can start using his stuff. But
Andy
um
Grammer, if you ever watch this,
I know,
we
right?
please,
Give us the
I
rights to
need a
it.
new money. Love is
And
the new
that's the one. I
money.
need
We'd
new money.
love to be having those as our anthems.
I love it.
Yeah.
You mentioned vacation, which that's, I mean, a little bit of a segue from the emergency fund, and the next one we're
Yeah.
going to talk about how much is too much. A couple things that just came to my mind. I think too often we have, there's a couple biblical, gracious, not biblical, pause, financial principles, not biblical. Maybe there's some biblical aspects to this too, but financial principles that,
I feel like I feel like my finances are often in biblical proportions, but
yes,
maybe
right.
I'm
There's definitely that, right?
overblowing things.
Um, but the idea of just having stagnant money, right? If you need $2,000 in a month to pay for your bills and your mortgage and things that are coming out of your checking account, there's literally no use and no need for an extra $4,000 just sitting in your checking account. If you're not going to use that money, to our previous point, okay, whether that's an emergency fund, whether that's just being smarter with that money and having your money work for you, move that into a place where it's actually gaining something rather than just sitting there stagnant. So there's one. But you had mentioned the vacation idea, which I know that the next question we're going to talk about how much is too much, right? Um, but another thing that just jumped into my mind is this idea of the YNAB rules. I know if we go all the way back to our budgeting, one of the rules is roll with the punches. Okay, if Dale, you've got your 20-year anniversary coming up. I think that's what you were mentioning, right? If you have a really great emergency fund built up, right? I was shooting for five, but it's sitting at $7,000. Don't feel bad. Don't feel guilty of borrowing a little bit from that emergency fund to do something to just celebrate. Money is fleeting. It's going to come. It's going to go. Use it to create those memories, create those time, create those things because those may not always be there. There's always an opportunity to make more money. So, again, just a little bit of a side stance there, right there. But I think that that's worth mentioning is that don't feel guilty about using your money in different ways. Obviously, we're talking specifically about emergency fund, but understand that money will come and go. Spend time on what it matters, or spend money on what matters. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you're exactly right. It's rolling with the punches. It's giving every dollar a job. And this sort of like just in case emergency fund account, right? Um, it's really it's there for the things that we don't want to happen. It's hard to be exact or specific and pre-anticipate exactly what emergency is going to come along in our lives in
Right.
1, 2, 3 years time or something. It's hard for us to know.
Right.
Obviously, we don't want our money to be working on just in case or like
Mhm.
have this catastrophic approach to our finances and our money
Mhm.
and only be saving for the rainy days or only be thinking about the rainy days. So absolutely, if you
Yep.
can think of a better way instead of like using that money to prevent what you don't want to see happening and to actually bless what you do want to see happening or bless a certain person in a certain line,
Right.
there's a charitable giving request from somebody that comes along your way and you say, well, I don't have that money set aside in my charity budgeting line, but I do have
Right.
an extra $1,000 in my emergency fund that I can probably replenish after 2 months.
Right.
So I'll happily add to it
Right.
that way. There's
Yep.
lots of cool strategies if you have those strategies down. If
Mhm.
you've got a
Right.
plan and you're able to do it, then there's a
Right.
lot more flexibility. And it's a
Right.
lot
We
easier to have those conversations and take those steps if you've done the legwork, right?
Exactly right, right. And we talk a lot about financial freedom, time freedom. So those are very inextricably tied together. Um, yeah, just understand that one does impact the other one. So I'm hoping that you guys are digging what we're putting down here. We are episode 9. We're putting out good content. We hope that you guys enjoy this. There's a way to quickly get to this podcast if you're wanting to share it. There's the YouTube channel, which has the podcast as well as some other things. We talked last week about debt. There's a financial GPS video that I think is a pretty good I don't know, wake up call as far as like, are we doing this the old way or the new way? Check that out. And then the Facebook page for Empower Wealth Solutions, which is sponsoring the Money DNA podcast. So check those out, and we would appreciate follows and likes and shares and all the stuff. So let's wrap it up, my friend. How much is too much? I think this is a question that I appreciate. We actually flip flop this in our little pre discussion here. I think this is important because I think people could go too far down the road of emergency funds where they've got 2 years, 3 years sitting right there. and it's still liquid, right? So it's still technically an emergency fund. It's not really invested at that point. Is there too much? Is there a way to go too much on this? And we've already talked about kind of minimums and what to shoot for. What do you think? What do you think?
Yeah, I think if we're giving every dollar a job, and we know that that money could, that every dollar could have the same potential to bless somebody down the line, then you have to start asking yourself, who do you want to bless with that money? Who do you want that dollar to be blessing? We talked about debts. Do we want to be blessing the Mr. Banker, or nothing wrong with Mr. Banker, but do we want to be making somebody else rich? Do you want to make yourself rich right now? Do you want to make yourself rich in the future? Do we want to be giving this money to yourself in the future, or blessing a loved one? And money itself can go to work and make more money. We'll talk about
Mhm.
compounding interest and some simple principles that way. But if you just sit there and allow money to sit in an account over time, if the money's sitting in a 0.1% interest account, if the money's sitting in a 5% or a 6% interest account, then the amount of time it takes for that money to grow is drastically shorter with the higher interest, right? I mean,
Right.
we'll talk about that next time. We'll go over some exact numbers.
Mhm.
Really, if you got too much money saved away for a rainy day, and you're saving, you got a really long runway, and you're saving for like a 1 in 100 thunderstorm kind of rain,
Mhm. Mhm.
then that money could be growing and
Right.
blessing yourself in 5 years time later. You could be
Right.
using that money to invest it in other ways, especially if you've got debts, and you could be paying down debt.
Right.
Don't be growing this massive emergency fund and still have an equal
Mhm.
amount of debt growing
Right.
underneath it. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Right.
So
Right.
for me personally, I think aging your money past, like, 6 months is really too much. If you're
Right.
making $50,000 a year as your income, then I wouldn't be. I would sit on at most $25,000. This is not, don't take this to the bank
Yeah.
in any way. It's absolutely fluid and flexible. You have a lot of space there, but anything past that, then it really can be growing and be used, invested in a better way somewhere else, in another vehicle. And we'll talk about investments in another time.
We'll say maybe too much. Again, we're not trying to say definitively, absolutely
I
anything
like
over
that.
6 months is, but it may be too much. And I know that we're going to talk more about interest rates and compound interest, better to say. But we've mentioned a couple times savings account compared to high yield savings account. I did this math before we started here, so I just know this off the top of my head. So this is the difference, guys. When we're talking like a 0.01% on $10,000 over a year, that gives you $1, literally $1. You put $10,000 in a savings account that's earning you, quote unquote, earning you 0.01%. That is $1 off of $10,000 compared to 4% is $400. Okay. If your money is parked, why
And
would you
that's just
not
1 year.
park it? Right? Why
Yeah.
would you not park it somewhere that it can actually get you something? What were you going to say, sir?
Yeah, no, I was just saying that, and that's just 1 year.
That's
That's
one
not
year.
even
Exactly right.
that's not even taking into account the power of compounding and how that grows, after 5 years, 10 years time.
Right.
But
Yep.
certainly,
Exactly right.
yeah.
So just
Uh,
wanted to make sure that everybody like understood like there is a reason why we are harping on this idea of finding a way to let your money work for you, right? Let your money work for you rather than just kind of sit there and collect dust. It's not doing anybody any well, that's not true. It's doing the bank some
yeah.
good, but it's not doing you any good just sitting in a low yield savings account.
Andy, I know that you have a type of investment account. I think it's called a Roth IRA.
Hmm.
Roth
Yep.
IRA, yeah, where it's a little bit like what we have here in Canada called the TFSA. You can add money up to a certain, you have a certain contribution limit to how much you can add in, but whatever you add in, whatever grows there, it grows tax free, right?
Right.
And then after a certain period of time, I think we said it was 60 years old, then you're
Uh,
able to access that money tax free as well. So
right.
if you're getting closer to the age of 60, you're listening to this and you're a little bit older than I am, not by much, but a little bit older than I am, then maybe that's a possibility for you. Instead of like your high yield savings account, maybe you can think about how to use that Roth IRA as a potential for an emergency fund, or putting that away,
Mhm.
because that's a short enough time horizon. You might be able to access it. It may be qualified as liquid. If you're far away from it though, then maybe not the greatest choice. Maybe that's not a great possibility. In
Right.
Canada, we have a TFSA, and that is a fantastic invention of the Canadian
Mhm.
government. I don't know who paid who to be able to come up with this
Mhm.
this 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 scheme, but um, if you're Canadian and you're listening to this, if you have not maxed out your TFSA, or if you have a lot of room, consider utilizing the room and utilizing your TFSA to be able to grow some of your money tax free. It is liquid, it is very tax efficient, and it's really worthwhile. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, I back to the Roth IRA. I mean, you hit it on the head. You have to be 59 and a half to be able to withdraw, and it doesn't need to be a 5-year-old account. So if you've had it since you were 50, then you can pull that off. The only caveat I would say that, and if you have it plussed up again, we're talking about emergency funds, right? So we are assuming that there's something happening that you need to pull this money out. It's not just like, hey, I'm gonna it's a whim, it's like an actual need. So absolutely at that point, if you are over 59 and a half, it's been a 5-year-old account, and you have the ability to pull that money out, that's great. To this idea here, it does grow tax free. So when you pull that money out, it's obviously not growing. But again, when it's an emergency, you got to pull money from somewhere. And if you don't have that in a high yield savings or under the mattress or wherever that is, then that is definitely an option for those that are a little bit older. So very good. All
I,
right.
I,
Good stuff,
I'm starting
sir.
to feel, I'm feeling sympathy for people who have money under a mattress.
I
Don't
know,
feel
right? Yeah.
judged. Like we're not pointing fingers specifically at you.
They
Yeah.
they might have more
Oh
money
man.
than me than I do in a bank. So, good on them
Oh, you
for
and me both. Yeah, for sure.
being savers. So, just recapping here, we talked quite a bit about the emergency layer. We recapped the previous layers to that. Talked about what it is. It's that rainy day fund. Where do I start? Again, as little as $1,000, but automate that as much as possible. And then there is an idea of too much, right? So 3 to 6 months would be great, but when we get past that 6 month margin, depending on your income, it may be better spent and better used in other ways. So any other parting thoughts, Mr. Dale?
My only thought for everybody this week, and maybe, I don't know where in the timeline you're hearing this, but whoever you are who needs to hear this, there is hope.
Mm,
You can. There's no situation that is too dire. I don't want to list off story after story, but I've heard story after story after story where you think
mhm.
the odds are impossible. There's no way they're going
Right,
to get out of it. You can get out of it. It
right,
feels dark wherever you might be right now. But if you have a good conversation,
right.
you come up with a plan and you execute on that plan, and somebody's holding your hand and
Mm,
and holding you accountable as you go through this dark time, then I
right,
promise you, you can get through it, and you can go and feel blessed and be a blessing to so many
right,
people in your immediate family, in your extended family, in your reach. Don't let your dreams or your we don't let them be quashed just because of
mhm,
your personal given situation at the
right,
time.
right.
And I know it's overwhelming,
Mhm,
but they're just numbers and figures at the end of the
right.
day. Please have a conversation. If you want to
Yep,
talk to us and reach out to us, we're here for
right.
you.
Yep, please
God
do.
bless you. We
Yep.
love you.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
love you guys. Again, there's all the links for there. We will post our contact information in the show notes there, so you guys can check us out and reach out to us. We would love to have that conversation. Thanks, guys. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon. See ya.
Cheers.